So we have a quorum, so I'll call the meeting to order and ask for a roll call.
Commissioner Jones,
Here.
Commissioner Williams,
Here.
Commissioner Freeman, Commissioner Silvas,
Here,
Commissioner Diana.
Here.
Thank
we
you.
have a quorum. Thank you, Braden. So the first item on our agenda is the approval of minutes of our previous meetings. The first was the public hearing that we had on October 24th, and you have the minutes of that public hearing that was provided online and in your packet. So do we have a motion for approval for the minutes of the public hearing from October 24th?
I move to, oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say so moved.
Second.
Thank you, Deshawn. Is there a second?
Second.
Patty? Thank you. Is there any discussion? No discussion. I'll ask for approval of the minutes from the hearing held on October 24th. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The ayes have it, and those minutes from the October 24th public hearing are approved. The next set of minutes are from the regular meeting that we had on October 24th. You have the minutes from that meeting in your packet. Do I hear a motion for approval of those minutes?
I move to approve.
Is there a second? Deshawn, thank you. So we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion of the minutes from our regular meeting on October 24th? Hearing none, I'll ask for the vote. All in favor of approving those minutes from our regular meeting, October 24th, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The ayes have it, and those minutes are approved. I'm moving on to the third item on our agenda. Are there any additions to the agenda for this evening?
No, there are no additions.
Okay, thank you, Braden. And is there public input for our meeting this evening? Thank you. And now we're moving on to presentations, the first of which is Champaign County Continuum of Service Providers to the Homeless, their strategic plan. And Katie, if you just want to introduce yourself as you get started.
Yeah, I'll do a brief introduction of this presentation.
Thank you, Braden.
So Katie Harmon is the coordinator for the Champaign County Continuum of Service Providers to the Homeless, and she'll be providing a brief introduction to what the Continuum of Service Providers does and who they are, and also be talking about the new 3-year strategic plan to address homelessness in Champaign County. So the city has been involved with this plan as well. A lot of stakeholders throughout the community have put a lot of effort into this, and so we just thought it was important to share with you some of the findings and also some of the priorities that we will be focusing on over the next 3 years in terms of addressing the homelessness crisis in Champaign County. So I'll turn it over to Katie.
Thanks, Braden. Thank you so much for having me and allowing me time to chat with you briefly. For those who don't know, the Champaign County Continuum of Service Providers to the Homeless is really a consortium of key stakeholders who are committed to preventing and ending homelessness here in Champaign County. So we're designated by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development as the local continuum of care for Champaign County. So their continuum of cares all across the U.S., over 400, and then we're one of 20 in the state of Illinois, and we're just a one-county continuum of care. And essentially, the Department of Housing and Urban Development really tasks continuums of care with coordinating a local response to homelessness. And this just provides a little bit more information. We're really looking at the needs of people experiencing homelessness in Champaign County, providing really a response to what those needs are, as well as those who are at risk of homelessness. So those are kind of, in a nutshell, some of our key tasks, if you will, of our continuum. There's also different pools of both federal and state funding that flow directly through our continuum of care. So our continuum of care puts out notices for grant proposals. We accept proposals and then also make funding decisions. So some of those funding sources are through the federal government, through the Department of Housing and Urban Development, and then also through the Illinois Department of Human Services. So we have right now we have over 40 members in our continuum of care. We really have a comprehensive stakeholder group, which I'm really happy about. We, of course, have homeless service providers and housing advocates. We also have victim service providers, lots of other nonprofit and social service agencies here in Champaign County, local government representation, healthcare providers, faith-based organizations or public housing agencies, and then also people with lived experience of homelessness who are participating in our continuum. But this is not an exhaustive list. It's really open to anyone who is committed to our mission. So this is our mission statement here. We just really recently updated that this past year. You can see it here. And it's really, we're really focused on moving forward with our strategic plan, which I'm going to get to here in a minute, and talking about our key priority areas and our goals over the next 3 years. So these are our 5 priorities. So we had a strategic planning committee meet over the last year. Some of those members were members of our executive committee as well as local funders, and then also other agencies who are active in our continuum. And so we really wanted to identify what priorities do we want to focus on over the next 3 years. So keep in mind, this isn't an exhaustive list. There are so many important priorities that we could focus on based on our mission. But these are kind of what we honed in on. So we got feedback from our planning committee, our full membership. In partnership with the United Way, we hosted a homeless services summit to really get continuous input on barriers that people might be facing to accessing homeless services here in Champaign County, as well as feedback on our strategic plan and what people saw as kind of the key needs regarding homelessness in Champaign County. So these are our 5 areas: permanent housing, data utilization and quality, equity, landlord engagement, and lived experience representation. So I have listed here all of our we identified really key strategies under our 5 priority areas and how we can achieve working towards achieving some of these specific measurable goals. So I have everything listed here. I won't read off one by one, but I'm also happy to share our PDF version of our strategic plan with Braden, and he can send it out to you too, so you have a copy of that. But I wanted to highlight some of the kind of key areas. So as far as permanent housing is really a key solution to ending homelessness. We need affordable permanent housing for folks who are experiencing homelessness. So, for example, if people are staying in an emergency shelter or they're unsheltered or even a transitional longer-term living program, if there's not affordable housing that they can access and move into, we're finding that people are kind of stuck in shelter because they can't afford housing, even with income. So there's a real disparity between income and housing costs. I'm sure that's not a surprise to anybody here. That's nationwide, but that continues to be an issue. So we wanted to focus on some key areas in expanding permanent housing. So we have here increasing the number of permanent supportive housing vouchers that we have in our community. So in our community, we have permanent supportive housing vouchers. A lot of these vouchers are kind of designated for people experiencing homelessness who also have a disability. And so we want to increase those vouchers that are available both for households with and without children. Every year we do a housing inventory count, and we really look at essentially our capacity and our continuum of services. We look at how many emergency shelter beds we have. We look at how many transitional housing beds we have. We look at how many vouchers we have, and then really see where the gaps are, and looking at our different partner organizations, what their waiting lists might be, and seeing where we can improve. So that's where we came up with some of these numbers and looking at how to expand our permanent housing vouchers. So that's really an important area. I'll move on to data utilization and quality. So I mentioned our housing inventory count. The other sources of data that we collect as a continuum is we do an annual point in time count. Maybe some of you have heard of that before. And that essentially is a kind of point in time snapshot on one day in January. It has to take place in the last 10 days in January of people who are unsheltered and sheltered in Champaign County. So that's coming up here on January 24th. And we really look at the data year to year and seeing, is our homeless population increasing, and looking at specific key demographics and really seeing, is our unsheltered population increasing? Are the number of people accessing shelters increasing or decreasing? So we really rely on that data to look at as well. And then also many of our homeless service providers enter data into a management system called Homeless Management Information System. So there's a lot of data that's collected, client-specific data, demographic data, but then also important information about, is this the first time someone has experienced homelessness? How long have they been homeless? When they exit programs, where are they exiting to? Were they able to find permanent housing? Or were they moving in with a family and friend? And so that's all information that we collect and look at. And so we really want to get better at sharing and analyzing the data with our full membership and also getting that data out there better to the public as well. And so these are some of the areas we want to focus on. We do want to increase the number of organizations who use the Homeless Management Information System, for several reasons, but it really allows us to look at the data a bit more thoroughly. So there's some items in here about that. We also want to continue to use, and we do to a certain degree, but use some of the data measurables when we're looking at making funding decisions through the sources of funding that I mentioned previously, and looking at grant proposals of our projects who are submitting applications. And then we also want to, I mentioned, to really have more targeted conversations at the data, sharing it with our membership. Not all of our membership sees the data regularly, looks at the data, so we want to kind of provide that more consistently with our full membership. And Braden, tell me if I'm chatting too long. Okay. And then equity. So this is another key priority that we have. Black people, people of color, and the LGBTQ plus community experience homelessness at a disproportionate rate. So I included some information from our 2023 point in time count, which took place last January. But Black people made up 63% of those experiencing homelessness, despite making up only 14% of the total population in Champaign County. So we really wanted to identify some key strategies in addressing these inequities that we're seeing specifically in homeless services. So we've started some of these items already. We've conducted initial kind of racial equity analysis of our CSPH membership. And so the Department of Housing and Urban Development gives some helpful guidance on how we can do this. So we're really looking at, program data, demographic data of who's being served, who's not being served, and then specific information such as who's being able to access vouchers, for example, when people are exiting our homeless services system, where are they going, and what are the demographic makeup of people transitioning out of our system as well. So we've started to do that, and we're going to continue on that. We have an LGBTQ plus work group as part of our continuum that meets regularly. So one of the things we're currently working on is addressing number 2 on this, is to kind of host more regular trainings on gender identity, non-discrimination, diversity, and inclusion. So we're working with some of our local organizations to provide and host those trainings for our membership. Some other items, we have some policies, holistic policies that apply to our full membership. For example, a policy on grievances, number 5 here, which we do have in place, but it's time for us to really look at that and see how we can update it. And that's really wanting to have a community-wide grievance policy for if someone's accessing services or unhappy with the service they received at an organization. Not only can they file a grievance within that specific organization, but have a real more, systematic approach for that to be brought to the CSPH, so we can make sure our membership is aware, but also we have a uniform, that's the word I'm looking for, a uniform policy on grievances, so people know what that is and how to file a grievance, and so then we can adjust policies accordingly. Landlord engagement is a huge priority too. We really would like to have more landlords engaged in our CSPH membership as a whole. But as you know, for people who are exiting shelters or unsheltered situations or trying to find housing in the rental market, we need good relationships with landlords. So we want to continuously improve those relationships. Number 1, so the Regional Planning Commission has been funded through the Housing and Homeless Innovation Grant this past year to implement a landlord risk mitigation fund. So landlords can apply for funding if there were damages to their unit, and hopefully that will maybe mitigate some concerns that landlords might have. We also want to host regular focus groups with landlords to hear maybe what their concerns are, to get their feedback, and also provide education about different voucher programs and the services that many of our providers offer. Sometimes they're just not familiar with what these voucher programs look like. Let's see. And then we also want to, for example, this past year we we partnered with Housing Action Illinois, a statewide organization, to provide source of income education. There was new legislation this past year regarding source of income protections for tenants. And so we hosted 3 separate workshops, one for our members on how to advocate for the clients that they're serving, one for tenants so they can know what their rights are, and then also one for landlords so they know what the new legislation is and what would be expected. And I think that was really positive, and so we want to continue having similar types of workshops moving forward. And then finally, last but certainly not least, we're really working towards more people recruiting more people with lived experience of homelessness, both in our full CSPH membership, but then also on our executive committee, so they can help share their experience and impact local policy and what we're trying to do. So some of these things have already been underway. So recently we've revamped our governance charter to allow for 2 seats on our executive committee specifically reserved for people with lived experience of homelessness. We're working on a position description for our executive committee members. And so when we're putting the word out there that we're looking for people with lived experience of homelessness, they kind of know what the work would entail, how they could use their expertise in helping support the mission of the CSPH. And then we're also looking at funding opportunities, stipends for people with lived experience of homelessness to provide that compensation for them sharing their expertise and participating in our executive committee. And then finally, we've been doing focus groups for people with lived experience of homelessness. We did one this past fall. We're going to be hosting them every spring and fall moving forward, and that's really just an opportunity for people to share what their experience has been, accessing services here in Champaign County, what went well, what didn't went well, ideas for improvement, and that feedback is really valuable. So we share that feedback with our full CSPH. We've incorporated feedback from those focus groups into the development of the strategic plan, and so we want to make sure we're continuing doing that as well. And then finally, I just wanted to share some of our upcoming priorities. So I mentioned our point-in-time count. Right now, we have over 40 volunteers signed up to assist with our point-in-time count, which is fantastic. We're working on collecting that bed inventory data for our housing inventory count. We have a really kind of a unique opportunity that we're partnering with an organization called the Illinois Data Quality Collaborative and other continuums of care across Illinois. I think we're one of 7, are really getting some key technical assistance on how to improve our local data. So that fits right into our strategic plan. It's an 18-month program that we're participating in. And then finally, really working towards incorporating all of the items I just discussed from our strategic plan into our regular meetings. We meet monthly. Our executive committee meets twice a month, and then we have several work groups who meet monthly as well. So we really want to use this kind of to guide us in our work moving forward, and not, just say we have a strategic plan and this is what it is. So we're really trying to get the word out there and share more information about what our group is doing and kind of what our priorities are. So that's all I have, and I'm happy to answer any questions, comments.
I have a question.
Yeah, absolutely.
Comment first. Thank you.
Sure.
But I wanted to know what the process or what are the steps needed, for one to receive a voucher, first off, and then what is the percentage of the month-to-month, rent or payments? What's that number?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's several different types of both rental assistance and vouchers that are available. Some organizations in our membership offer short-term rental assistance. Maybe there's a hardship and they only need 1 to 2 months of assistance. So several of our organizations and our membership offer that. There's a coordinated rental assistance response through Champaign Township, Cunningham Township Supervisor's Office, and the Regional Planning Commission. So they can really apply through any of those entities and get service. But it's coordinated so we can make sure that the largest number of people are being served. Sure. So that's kind of one way. And then also we have a coordinated entry system. And so Regional Planning Commission is funded for a project called Centralized Intake. And then there's coordinated entry partners. And really the purpose is if somebody goes to Strides, for example, or Cunningham Township Supervisor's Office, Regional Planning Commission, it's kind of a no wrong door approach to getting services. So all of our partner agencies make referrals to Centralized Intake. There's an assessment that's completed, and then essentially that assessment tool make some essentially as a score, and so people are prioritized based on vulnerability. For example, if somebody's sleeping in a place not meant for human habitation, in a car, in a park, they're going to be prioritized for vouchers that are available over somebody who might be staying at a shelter. I'm not, it's none of those situations are ideal, but there is kind of a method based on vulnerability, essentially. So through Centralized Intake, if there's vouchers available, they look at that priority list, and then once a voucher is available, they'll kind of go down the list and share with that person what might be available and are they interested in those vouchers. So sometimes there's vouchers available through the Housing Authority, for example, through Regional Planning Commission, other organizations. So not all are accessed through Centralized Intake, but a majority of them are, which I think is helpful so people know where to access kind of those services and everyone's getting referred to a centralized location. I hope that I don't have the percentages though, but I'd be happy to get more information on that, and I can send it to Braden to follow up.
Yeah,
too.
typically a rental assistance program, the ratio is so the tenant is expected to contribute 30% of their income, whatever that may be. If their income is 0, then it's 0. But so typically they're responsible for about 30% of what their income is, and then the voucher or the rental assistance would cover the rest.
Sure. Yep. That makes sense. I didn't know if it was just different or anything like that too. But thank you guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have just a couple questions, and I'm suffer from sleep deprivation. So if I don't look at you, it's because I need to concentrate, okay?
That's no
So
problem.
don't be offended.
I understand.
How many organizations that comprise this consortium that are actually homeless organized organizations like HUC and others here in Champaign?
You know what, I'd have to look at our membership. I think I actually brought the list with me. I can give you those specific numbers, and I also can email you our list. It's hard to say off the top of my head.
I'm looking for specifically homeless individuals who are
Oh,
organized.
homeless
Yes,
individuals. I'm
looking-
so sorry.
I'm looking for like HUC and others that are comprised of Central Illinois, Homeless United for Change, and an organization like that. That might be very beneficial because what you're looking for is already organized. And so I just want to see if those organizations are a part of your consortium.
So we have, I would say to answer that question, we have representatives from Housing Action Illinois and the Supportive Housing Providers Association. I don't know if that's what you're getting at.
No, these are
Okay.
different. These are the grassroots homeless people who are actually homeless and organized for
Okay.
themselves.
Okay.
And then they represent on the different boards in Central Illinois. They're really strong organizations that you may want to look into.
Absolutely.
If they're
I'm
not
not
on your
familiar
board.
with
Because what you
them.
actually,
Okay.
when you went through your whole presentation, that's already organized for Central Illinois. You just need to tap into them.
Okay.
Or get them on board with you guys, and then you won't have to spin your wheels so much. So you might want to look at that.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Other one is, a question is, this is just a question. Chronic homelessness versus short-term homelessness versus University of Illinois. Okay, you know where I'm getting at, okay? How many of that are you seeing represented within your efforts, particularly the small village that's uprising on the north side of Urbana?
Are you looking for like specific, like a breakdown of the number of people we're seeing?
Yeah, because I'm right downtown Urbana, and probably every day I pretty much have a relationship with almost every homeless person in downtown Urbana on a first name basis. So when they go in the hospital, they call me and says, "Pastor Bob, I'm here at the hospital. Okay?" And then I advocate for them to stay longer, the whole nine, all that good stuff.
Sure.
So I just want to know the chronic homelessness versus short-term homeless, because a student can be homeless, but yet not address the chronic homelessness that we have. And some people are homeless because of choice. That makes sense. And I'm not talking about those. I'm talking about those who
Sure.
just can't get in.
I don't have the chronic homeless numbers with me, but that's easily data I could pull because that's data that we
Yeah, I'll
specifically
email you these questions as well.
track.
Okay.
I will say that somebody who's chronically homeless, so if they've been homeless for a year or more or a
Right.
certain number of times within the last 3 years, they are prioritized for permanent supportive housing vouchers, for example, and services. So normally if we have a program available, they're kind of at the top of the list based on vulnerability.
Sure,
And
sure.
often people who are chronically homeless have also disability, medical issues as well, kind of what you were referencing.
Right,
But
right.
I can give you those specific
Right.
information.
I'll give you my information. I'm
Yeah.
going to be real quick because I don't want to eat up your time. Other one was this 63% African-American percentage. Is what you're seeing that's coming through the system of the 14%? Urbana is 17%. But is that what you're seeing, 63-17 or 63-14?
Yeah, so that data was pulled from our point in time count, and there are limitations with the
Oh, yeah,
point in
sure.
time count, right? Like it's often a super cold day. We don't identify everybody, but I would say that's pretty consistent over the last few years. And looking at our data is what we've seen, and that includes both people who we come across who are unsheltered on the night of the count, but then also people who are unsheltered. So that's been pretty consistent the last
And this is
handful
my
of years.
question then. Of your board that comprises all the efforts, what is the percentage of your revenue that goes towards that 63% versus the 63%? And what I'm asking is, if your highest rate is people of color, then what are the efforts towards the people of color?
Yeah, I don't know if Braden, do you have any, like, I mean, so the funding, well, the funding pools that we have are allocated to different organizations for different programming. So I'm just trying to think if there's an easy way to gather some of that data.
Basically, you have to almost crunch your numbers at the end. We had to do this in Springfield, where we had to take our numbers and sit down and say, okay, let's have a conversation, because you couldn't extrapolate that question because the system was not designed to extrapolate that answer.
Sure.
Does that make sense? So you may want to look at that. That's going to be something we're going to press into with your organization.
Sure.
The 63-14 or 63-17%.
Absolutely. And I think now that you're mentioning that too, I think some of that is data and a process that we'll engage in as we get further into this racial equity analysis that we've started. Because we definitely have in review and vet the organizations who are funded through those different streams and what you're talking about. So we could certainly also, there's a way through the homeless management information systems to pull that specific demographic data as well.
Right.
And I know that's what our full membership is interested in seeing too. So I think we could certainly do that.
Okay. And then one of the things that I really think that we should look at is when you develop your policy for complaints with landlords, there needs to be an avenue around landlords where somebody can come directly to CSHP, follow, because personalities get involved. And this is true about CU area, is that you have personalities, or you have somebody who holds that power and doesn't go nowhere. I'm finding that individuals don't have a way to get around to regional planning, or get around to someone who can actually look at someone and hold someone else accountable. It should be almost a both and, right? Where a complaint can be sent, but also it can be sent so you can monitor to make sure that complaint is followed through. So just want to make sure that gets done.
Absolutely.
The other piece that I want to look at is, have you guys looked at and developed a partnership with Carl Hospital to remove fees and costs for homeless?
You know, so that's not a specific area we've targeted, but we do have Carl Hospital
As a partner.
and some of the is a part of our group and has been pretty active. And so that could be something we could look at.
I would really press into them because a lot of people get scared to press into a large organization. But in Springfield, we got the local hospitals to waive those fees and costs, even to host every 3 months on-site clinics, mammograms, everything, so that the homeless don't have to have a bill. With me, it's critical that we don't put more weight upon them than necessary, or can somehow work out a way that we can put some dollars with Carl to cover that. So I would look at that medical thing that's out there, and not necessarily put it towards the drive a bus thing. That mobile boat, that doesn't hit. It touches homelessness, but they don't trust it. Amen. So then my last one, have you dealt with any chronic migrants in the area that you're able to help?
So yeah, we have, and so we have a couple organizations who specifically are working with the immigrant population that we've been doing some more coordinated efforts with.
Sure.
So Janine Boomba with Dimension F is a newer organization. She's joined our group recently, and so that's been really helpful to have her insight, and she's actually presenting to our membership in February to share more information about how the other providers can get connected with her and the work that she's doing. And I know anecdotally from some of our other providers have been sharing an influx of different immigrant populations and refugees coming into accessing shelter services specifically. So that's kind of initial conversations that we've just been having at some of our meetings, or I've had in one-on-one meetings.
Yeah, and just FYI, if somehow we as a faith community can assist in that way or any way, please let us know. I'm usually referring people, and then AC refer them to me, and I was like, okay, what do you actually need? You need psych services, so let me get you to a place where you can actually do that. Cool. Just my last question, and it deals with vouchers for beds versus homes. Is there a component that leads persons from the bed count to the actual home ownership piece. That means total restoration, not just getting them off the street, getting them shelter, but it's something to move them towards permanency, like a job and et cetera, to make sure they're self-sufficient.
Can you say that again?
Let me put it a different way. Is there a connection between the voucher system that you guys use or the beds you're implementing, filling, moving them towards like the Housing Authority of Champaign County where they can actually have permanent housing and then supplement that with a work program of some sort so they have some additional funds so they can be sufficient or so they can be restored holistically versus the bed, shelter piece?
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's a really good point. Yes. So really case management and supportive services is a key component to almost all of our shelter providers, offering a wide range of connection to whether it's referrals and connecting to RPC's workforce development program or at the WorkNet Center, also connecting to mental health, substance abuse, different childcare resource service. So many of the programs that are funded do a lot of intensive case management work. And then even in permanent housing, supportive services are often offered as well. So if people get into housing that they, still have a case manager or somebody that they connect with to hopefully maintain that housing stability and be connected with these other resources. And that's really the focus of Housing First methodology, really getting people into permanent housing and out of the shelter system as quickly as possible, because that in and of itself is traumatic, and just being in a shelter or being unsheltered, of course. So the goal is really to move people into permanent housing as quickly as possible, and then to provide those kind of wraparound and supportive services, a connection to different resources, job training, education, all of those things once they're stably housed. It's certainly offered beforehand. But as you know, if someone's in a crisis situation in a shelter, for example, it's hard to sometimes think about some of those other things until you have your basic needs met, such as housing.
Yeah, I would press into Carl and their community nursing program because we're getting ready to advocate for community nurses to be downtown Urbana, to live in downtown Urbana and be present versus somebody have to go to. They're right there in the community. I would press into Carl a little bit and say, hey, you may want to look at providing place and services for a community nurse to be there, which is also a case manager. Does that make sense?
Sure.
To actually get that continuum of care through the whole process versus having to face another person or a different personality in a different sect. And that's one of the things that they really are advocating for. So you might want to press into Carl and ask them for that as well.
Thank you for that recommendation.
But thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And you can feel free to email me, call me. I'm happy to chat
Girl,
further
I got your
too.
number. No.
Absolutely. You bet. Thank you so much. Thanks for all the helpful suggestions and input, and I will certainly work into those. Thank you for having me.
Sorry, it was off.
Oh.
So that takes us to the staff report.
Yes, thank you, and thank you, Katie, for your presentation. So just a brief staff report for you tonight. So our consolidated annual performance evaluation report, which is our HUD report that reflects on our year progress, was submitted. We did a presentation to all of you back in September on that plan. It was submitted to HUD. We got some initial comments just for some corrections to be made, and that has been resubmitted. So hopefully we'll get final sign-off from HUD on that soon, which is always great. And then also in your packet, I have included an updated annual action plan timeline. I presented a timeline, I believe, back in October. I've tweaked it a little bit just based on some scheduling items. So you'll see that that timeline in your packet. For those of you who've been on the commission for a while, you know every spring it's a process in terms of getting the annual action plan draft completed, the public input period, and then getting it approved by you all and then by City Council as well. So you see those dates. The first date that's upcoming is January 30th, which will be our next meeting. There will be a public hearing on the annual action plan and community needs. And then I should have a draft plan available for public review on March 1st. So I'll make sure to send that out to all of you, and I encourage you to share it broadly with your networks as well. So anyway, that timeline is just for your reference. We hope to have it submitted to HUD mid-May. That's typically the date we shoot for. Another item are the applications for community housing development organizations were sent out back in December. So this is another kind of yearly HUD process that we go through. We have 2 certified CHODOs in Champaign County, and CHODO is the acronym for a community housing development organization. So if you hear me say CHODO, that's what it means. We have 2 certified CHODOs in Champaign County, Habitat for Humanity and First Followers, both of which have applied and received funding from us in previous years to build affordable housing. So the applications for funding were sent out back in December. You all will be reviewing those applications that were submitted and will be making a final funding decision either at our January 30th meeting or potentially in February, depending on how quickly I can get those processed. Just for your reference, for this fiscal year, we have $120,000 available in grant funds for CHODOs for housing development, and then $32,500 available for operational expenses. So both Habitat and First Followers will be submitting proposals for that funding, and then we'll be making that final funding decision. And then just lastly, real quick, I wanted to just mention it. You might have seen it online. We have posted the position for a community development coordinator, which is in the grants division to help with all of our fun grant stuff. So that has been posted, and hopefully we'll be adding someone to our team in the coming months. So that's exciting. And that's all that I have for the staff report. So I can take any questions.
Questions for Braden? Is there any unfinished business to come before the commission this evening?
No.
No unfinished business. And that takes us to new business and the resolution. I think you have a copy of that in your packet. Do you want to give us some background on that?
Yes, absolutely. So this is an amendment. This is a resolution to amend a tenant-based rental assistance agreement that we currently have with Champaign County Regional Planning Commission. So back in March of 2022, we brought before you and then also to City Council a tenant-based rental assistance agreement with Champaign County Regional Planning Commission to fund a pilot rental assistance program that targeted families that had experienced gun violence. It was a pilot program. Regional Planning Commission had never run that program before, so they wanted to kind of see how it went. Initially, the commission and also City Council approved $125,000 for that program. So it was kind of a slow start. They didn't get as many referrals as they were expecting to that program. So after kind of reevaluating their priorities, they entered into a partnership with First Followers to kind of retool it into a reentry rental assistance program. So that would be a rental assistance program where First Followers would refer clients that they were working with who had recently been released from incarceration. They would refer them to Regional Planning Commission to get rental assistance. So we allowed them to make that change to the agreement, just again because it was a pilot program and we just kind of wanted to figure out what worked best. So we made that change back in August, and since then that partnership with First Followers has really taken off, and RPC notified us that they were able to commit that total $125,000, which was great. The issue is the agreement goes through June 30th, 2025. So they said, well, we can serve more clients because First Followers has more clients to refer, but we've committed all the money, which is a good problem to have. So they came to us and requested an additional an additional $125,000 to add to this existing agreement. The agreement date remains the same. It will go through June 30th, 2025. They are expecting to serve 10 to 12 additional First Followers clients with rental assistance. So just to provide a little bit of information about how that rental assistance works. So RPC's reentry program provides 12 months of rental assistance to individuals who are working with First Followers and who were recently released from incarceration. The tenants themselves are responsible for contributing up to 30% of their income to the rent. Again, if their income is zero, then they will not be responsible. But again, there is, the way it works is that RPC will cover the balance, right? If they can only contribute a little bit, RPC picks up the rest. And then participants who are enrolled, again, there's that 12-month cap. However, based on kind of a case-by-case basis, all clients are eligible to have an additional year added if they need it. So there's some flexibility built into that as well. So tonight, we're asking you to approve forwarding this resolution to amend this TBRA agreement to City Council Committee of the Whole with a recommendation for approval. So the hopeful timeline is that next week City Council can consider it, and then we can have it approved by the end of January, because First Followers already has, I believe, 5 clients who are basically waiting. They don't know yet if they'll have the funding, so we're hoping to get this approved. So I can take any questions that you might have.
It'd be neat if somehow we can get a report back, or if it was a pilot program, actual statistical data, so we can actually, in my brain, remunerate that thing. So if we can ask for that. Okay.
Yeah, and that is RPC's intention. They were very clear that they, if this is really successful, which it seems like it is, they want it to become a permanent program. And so there definitely will be that report. That's something that we will require after that date when the agreement ends. And because, if it really works well, then that's great. But to see those numbers, we'll definitely be asking that, and we'll be presenting that to you all as well.
Any other questions about this
I think it
proposed?
sounds great.
No, this is
Like
fantastic.
there was
Come
a
on.
pivot in the program to meet a need, and it's done that so successfully. That's really great.
Thank
It
you
is, as you
guys for
say, a
your
good
leadership.
problem to have. So do I hear a motion?
So move.
So, thank you, Bob. Is there a second?
I second.
Okay. All in favor of recommending this resolution approving the amendment?
I'll
say
do a roll call for that.
Oh, you want to do a roll
Yeah,
call? Okay,
that's okay.
we'll do a roll call.
Commissioner Jones,
Aye.
Commissioner Williams,
Aye.
Commissioner Freeman,
Aye.
Commissioner Silvas,
Aye.
Commissioner Diana.
Aye.
Thank you.
So the ayes have it, and we are recommending that resolution approving the amendment. Council. That is the end of our agenda, unless there's anything else that commissioners have or staff?
I'll just reiterate, the next meeting, Tuesday, June, could you imagine? January 30th. So I look forward to seeing you all then. I'd also like to introduce Kimberly Smith, who's here with us tonight. She's the city's community development director. So she's been with us since April. So, if you haven't met her yet, I'm sure you could introduce yourself. So thank you.
Thanks for coming, Kimberly. So we are adjourned.